Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mr. Paramahansa Bhagavad-gita Ashtotar Tadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Bhagavad-gita Ashtotar Tadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, give me a second here. On this 25th day of February 2019 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 3, entitled Karma Yoga, and we're on text number 24, page 161. Utside yuri me loka nakoyang karma chedaham sankadasya chakartasyam upahanyami ma prajaha. Utside yuri me loka nakoyang karma chedaham sankadasya chakartasyam upahanyami ma prajaha. Utside yuri me loka nakoyang karma chedaham sankadasya chakartasyam upahanyami ma prajaha. Utside yuri me loka nakoyam karma chedaham Sankarasya chakartasyam upahanyamima prajaha utsideyurime loka nakoryang karma chedaham Sankarasya chakartasyam upahanyamima prajaha. Utsideyu would be put into ruin. Ime, all these, lokaha, worlds, na, not, kuryam, I perform, karma, prescribed duties. Chet, if, aham, I, sankarasya, of unwanted population, cha and karta, creator. Syam would be, upahanyam would destroy, imaha, all these, prajaha, living entities. Translation. Krishna says to Arjuna, if I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. Purport. Varna Sankara is unwanted population which disturbs the peace of the general society. In order to check this social disturbance, there are prescribed rules and regulations by which the population can automatically become peaceful and organized for spiritual progress in life. When Lord Krishna descends, naturally he deals with such rules and regulations in order to maintain the prestige and necessity of such important performances. The Lord is the father of all living entities, and if the living entities are misguided, indirectly the responsibility goes to the Lord. Therefore, whenever there is general disregard of regulative principles, the Lord himself descends and corrects the society. We should, however, note carefully that although we have to follow in the footsteps of the Lord, we still have to remember that we cannot imitate him. Following and imitating are not on the same level. We cannot imitate the Lord by lifting Govardhan Hill, as the Lord did in his childhood. It is impossible for any human being. We have to follow his instructions, but we may not imitate him at any time. The Srimad Bhagavatam 10:33, 30-31 affirms, Naitat samacha yanjatu manasapi yanishwaraha vinashyat yachadan maudhyad yata rudrobdi jambisham ishwaranam pachak satyam tataiva charitam kvachit tesham yat swatvacho yuktam buddhimang tat samacharet. One should simply follow the instructions of the Lord and his empowered servants. Their instructions are all good for us, and any intelligent person will perform them as instructed. However, one should guard against trying to imitate their actions. One should not try to drink the ocean of poison in imitation of Lord Shiva. We should always consider the position of the Ishwaras, or those who can actually control the movements of the sun and the moon, as superior. Okay, time out here. Just give me. Okay, sorry. Without such power, one cannot imitate the Ishwaras, who are super powerful. Lord Shiva drank poison to the extent of swallowing an ocean. But if any common man tries to drink even a fragment of such poison, he will be killed. There are many pseudo-devotees of Lord Shiva who want to indulge in smoking ganja, marijuana, and similar intoxicating drugs, forgetting that by so imitating the acts of Lord Shiva, they are calling death very near. Similarly, there are some pseudo-devotees of Lord Krishna who prefer to imitate the Lord in his Ras Lila, or dance of love, forgetting their inability to lift Govardhan Hill. It is best, therefore, that one not try to imitate the powerful, but simply follow their instructions. Nor should one try to occupy their posts without qualification. There are so many, quote, incarnations of God without the power of the Supreme Godhead. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So Krishna here is making an argument beginning in text 21 for the need of leading personalities, such as Arjuna, to do the right thing for the sake of the society as a whole. And this principle, this what we would call it the Acharya principle, which is nicely, concisely described in text 21, Yad yada charati shreshtas, tattadevetaro janaha. Sanyat pramanam kurote lokas tadanavartate. He says, whatever a leading personality does, a shreshta, a respectable leader, whatever he does, achar means to behave or act. Whatever he does, that sets a standard for society as a whole. And whatever pramanam he sets by that activity, all the world pursues. So this is a general principle in human society. In every social unit, even down to the family, there's a leading personality. If the father is a no account, drunkard and doesn't like to work and beats the wife, this is going to create havoc in the family because that's setting the standard of behavior. But if he's upstanding and moral and he teaches the children, loves them, so forth, then that will set. And then you'll have, on that small level, you'll have a good population. This word varna sankar actually means the mixing of the varnas. Is when there's not careful following of the social norms for marriage and generation of good population. There's no rules, no regulations. Everything is random. And that reflects itself also in the educational system. And you find that what you have today, which is chaos. There's a lot of chaos going on. So Krishna here has said that, well, I myself, although I have no duty to perform, the concept of duty is very important. Duty is given by a higher authority. It's just like even in the social sphere, you're living in the United States, and you have a duty to obey the laws and to pay your taxes. And when they call you, to go into the army. I faced this in the 60s. Of course, I was a conscientious objector then, because the government itself was corrupt. Let's put it that way. But in general, when you're living in a family, the mother and the father have certain duties, which if they don't perform, then the family degrades and chaos is there. But if they work, and the mother takes care of the children and this and that, and it's nicely set up, then things go along smoothly. So in society as a whole, Krishna is saying that even for the sake of instructing the people in general, you should perform your duty. He's really talking about, remember back when he was talking about sacrifice and this cycle of sacrifice, that we have to recognize that we need the sun and the water and all of these things and the proper rain, or that we can't even eat properly. So we have to recognize the higher powers that are giving that, and there's certain sacrifices to perform in the Vedic culture. If you don't acknowledge your dependence on these higher forces, then since it's all personal, everything is personal, then there'll be restriction and disruption, and there'll be suffering. And so there's a cycle there. We get the benefits of these the gifts of the gods ultimately from Krishna. We acknowledge them, like we offer our food to the Lord. We acknowledge where it comes from, and then it's supplied in the right amount at the right time, and everything goes nicely. But then he said, if someone is completely self-realized, take 17. One who takes pleasure in the self, that's the kappa self, meaning Krishna consciousness. Atman is santushta, completely satisfied. He has no duty to perform, because he's already connected to the highest giver of duty and authority, and so it's all waived. It's just like if you get a pardon, you may perform some criminal act, but if you get a pardon from the king, then they can't arrest you. They open the doors, you have to leave the prison. So if you're directly connected with the supreme lawgiver, then you don't have to follow all the rules and regulations of sacrifice. You just have to make sure your relationship with that supreme lawgiver is intact. And therefore, there's certain, duties you have in that regard. But it's more on the bhakti level, However, even such persons who don't need to perform these activities do them for the sake of instructing people in general. That's the whole point he's making here. And he gave the example of Janaka, King Janaka, the father of Sita. That text 20, kings just as Janaka attained perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work. Oh, Arjun, you should fight in the battle. He's bringing it back to that idea. And then Krishna gives himself as the example, as we just read in the last few verses, that if I didn't perform my duties, now there's two distinct periods of Krishna's Leela. In Vrindavan, actually we're finding that, he had a duty. He was a coward boy, so he took on that role. Nobody knew who he really was. And so he took on this role of the coward boy, and he would go out and herd the cows, herd the calves, herd the cows. But notice what's happened here. He gets so wrapped up in his playing with his friends and having lunch and everything. Oh my God, where are the calves? Right? They're gone. And again, in the cows, they're playing, and the cows wander off, and there's a forest fire. We're reading that in Krishna book, right? The cows get into danger. So he's not really, he's kind of deviating from strict duty. Of course, in the end, it all works out. He can swallow the forest fire, and get the calves back, and imitate the calf. So, but when he leaves Vrindavan, because Vrindavan is conducted just by this loving exchange. That's the most important thing. It eclipses everything else, and duties and this and that. He goes, and the big one is that he violates all the rules and regulations and goes out in the middle of the night and dances with other men's wives and with the unmarried gopis. Now that's really against the rules, But it's the top Leela. It's the most, it's worshipped, right? Because he's beyond all rules. But then when he leaves Vrindavan, goes to Mathura, he takes on a more official role. First of all, he starts using weapons. Before, he's just killing all these demons. If you study it, there's no weapon. He swings them around. He gets inside and expands himself. He puts his hand inside and expands. He kicks. No weapons because he's not a Kshatriya, not in the role of a Kshatriya. Then he leaves Vrindavan, goes to Mathura, and now he's in a different role. Suddenly, it's understood after he kills Kamsa. Oh, he's not really the son of Nanda. He's the son of Vasudeva. He's actually a Kshatriya. So when the big threat comes with Jarasandha, right? Because Jarasandha was really upset because he had these two daughters which were nicely married off to Kamsa. Kamsa was killed. The daughters come back. They can't be married again, right? So Jarasandha is really ticked off, as we say. So he's decided to annihilate Krishna. So he invades. He surrounds Mathura with millions of soldiers and elephants, and it's a huge army. And so Krishna comes out of the city with Balaram and a little squad of men, his soldiers. And then he invokes some mantras, and the chariot, two chariots come down from the sky, completely equipped with weapons. One has Garuda on it, one has Hanuman, or I forget it, Balaram's, there's maybe another symbol. So there's one for Balaram, and that's their response. Meanwhile, all the ladies are on the parapets looking, oh my God, Krishna's completely surrounded, just like a little island in an ocean. He's a goner. That's the thing, like with Kaliya, they were sure he's finished. So then he starts firing his weapons, and there's this huge annihilation. It happens 17 times. But he's in the role of a Kshatriya. So in that role, especially when he goes to Dwarka, he's not the king. He's appointed Ugrasen as the king, who's Kamsa's father. Who was put in prison by Kamsa, So Kamsa was killed, so that's good. But Krishna just takes part in the sabha every day. He goes to the sabha means the assembly hall, the parliament, where they discuss what to do in the city and everything. So, and then in all of his 16,108 palaces, he's performing the duty. He has 11 children, 10 sons, 1 daughter by each wife. And he dutifully gets the daughters married and the sons married and does all the things. He's doing all the duties of a proper householder. So in this way, he's teaching. So that's what he's referring to here, because this is Krishna in his householder role. This is, he's been in Dwarka for many years. So if I did not do my duties, all these worlds will be put to ruination, because he's the natural leader of everyone. So he's encouraging Arjuna on several levels to fight. One is, it's the right thing to do. And another is to be a good example for others. Because if you leave the battlefield, then everyone will leave the battlefield, and things will be chaotic. So he's making that argument now. Okay, any questions on or comments on these? Yes, ma'am.
Did Krishna's sons go to the battle?
Oh, yeah. They were all great fighters.
So were they on Garuda's side?
No, they were, no.
Garuda got Krishna's
Duryodhana. Oh yeah, that's true. Well, it wasn't his direct sons. There were many other Yadus. In other words, that the you know, I don't remember reading directly. I mean, his sons were fighting a lot when the demons attacked Dwarka. They're also very heroic there. So how much they participated directly in the battle, because they weren't Kurus, you know, they were Yadus. They're a different dynasty. So how much they participated? I don't think they didn't participate much in that battle, because they were later annihilated. You know, Krishna, after the whole battle is done, Krishna's, these are all demigods and everything. They need to get back to the heavenly planets. Plus, he felt that the Yadu dynasty itself was now ascendant, because the Kurus were decimated. You know, the Pandavas are there and they're ruling, you know. But he felt, if Krishna felt if he left and left the Yadu dynasty there, that it would be, that they themselves would become a burden on the earth. So for two reasons, to get them maybe back to the heavenly planets and to relieve that burden, he arranged for this, I don't know if you know about this, that this was, that there was this, how did it go? Well, first of all, there was a curse, because the young boys in the dynasty, they were playing a trick on the sages. They dressed up Samba as a woman, and he was pregnant, supposedly. There was a pillow in there or something. And they asked the sages, kind of as a joke, is he going to be a boy or a girl? And these great sages, you know, they became angry. And they said, that so-called child is actually going to be a lump of iron, and that will cause the destruction of the whole dynasty. So the boys were terrified, because they knew the power of these sages. What they say is true, you know. So they ran back to the assembly. They told Father Krishna what happened. So then everyone would, you know, in the assembly turned white and said, "Oh my God, what have you done?" So they took that big lump of iron, and he ground it down into a little powder. And like if you ever ground, you know, like carrots or something, there's a little nub left, right? So they ground, and all they had is this, you know the story, right? This iron powder with a little nub. So they took it all to the seashore in, where is it? I forget the place on the seashore. It's a holy city. And they threw all that, you know, iron filings into the ocean, and they threw that nub, the little nub, into the ocean. So what happened is that a fish swallowed the little nub, and it became lodged in there. And all of those filings just washed up onto the shore, and they took root as some kind of a special kind of a bamboo type of reed. And the fish was later caught by a fisherman who was also an archer, a hunter. And he found that iron, and he put it on an arrow. He thought, oh, this would make, you know, he filed it down, he made it a nice arrow tip, and he was carrying it around. So then what happened is that to atone for, there was there were some predictions about the demise of Dwarka. He said, so Krishna said, everyone has to go to the seashore at this city and perform sacrifice so that we can atone for this, you know, and counteract this evil influence. So all the Yadus went over there, and they started drinking liquor, because the Kshatriyas can drink. And so you know what sake is? Sake is like rice wine. So they had this rice wine. So they're all drinking, and they become kind of mad, and then they pull up the reeds, and they turn into iron, because they're iron filings. So that was so they start beating each other and killing each other. This is all arranged by Krishna. Krishna and Balaram are also there. They're attacking Krishna and Balaram and Krishna are killing him off. And so all of them were killed in turn in fight, you see. And Krishna then, not Balaram, no, not Balaram and Krishna, not there. And then Krishna went off and he met Uddhava, and then he had his final instruction with Uddhava in the forest. And then at the end of these instructions, this hunter comes along, and he shoots Krishna. He sees Krishna behind the foliage, and he thinks it's a deer, and he looks at the heel. He shoots at the heel, and he hits Krishna with the arrow in the heel. With that same arrow. And that is the proximate, disappearance of Krishna. Oh, he supposedly died from that. That's the whole thing. Hare Krishna. How are we doing? Do you want to come in?
I mean, I know that it's late. Is that okay?
It's okay, but just take your shoes off. He's an old timer. Yeah, and pick up. We're on page 162. You can get if you want to sit on the chair, you can. So anyway, Krishna is explaining here that the great personalities have to be very careful what they do, and because they set the example. Page 163. So, I think we're on. Did we do 25? We didn't do 25. Let's do 20. Sakta karmanya vidbangso. Page 162. Yata kuvanti bharata. Koyad vidbang tata saktash. Chikishu lokasangraham. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. Purport: a person in Krishna consciousness and a person not in Krishna consciousness are differentiated by different desires. A Krishna conscious person does not do anything which is not conducive to development of Krishna consciousness. He may even act exactly like the ignorant person who is too much attached to material activities. But one is engaged in such activities for the satisfaction of his sense gratification, whereas the other is engaged for the satisfaction of Krishna. Therefore, the Krishna conscious person is required to show the people how to act and how to engage the results of action for the purpose of Krishna consciousness. You got it? You okay? Okay. So the key here is the asakta and sakta. Everything is moved according to our desire. We have desires are there, and they're mediated through our intelligence and mind and senses. But it's the desire that moves us one way or another. And in the material sphere, the desires are influenced by the modes of nature. According to the modes that you've acquired through association, through other people and things that you hear, you see, you eat, and it's your environment as your association in general. That will influence what kind of music you like, what kind of food you like, what you want to do, whether you become angry easily or not. This is what it means to be conditioned. So here he's making this. Krishna is drawing the strong distinction between those who are attached. Sakta karmanya vidbangso. Abidbangso means in ignorance. Those who are ignorant of what's going on, they become affected by the modes of passion and ignorance. And their activities, motivated by certain desires and fears and all of these things, is what conditioned life is all about. But the vidvans, when they act, they do so without attachment, even though it may look like the same thing. One boy, or one girl is very energetically sweeping this floor. So he says, "Oh, they must be the janitors around here." They identify them as janitors are those who clean up for money, but they're not janitors. They are devotees who are doing it simply out of devotion to Krishna. They're not getting paid, in other words. The pay is the purification of their heart and their development of more attraction for Krishna, which they know is the real goal. But in order to illustrate that, how one should work for Krishna with selflessly, then those who don't need to do it or not need to do it, they'll act in any way, in a regulated way, for the benefit of people in general. And Srila Prabhupada showed that himself. He would chant with us, and he would offer his food in the ordinary way and do all the things that showed us how to be a devotee. He even got down on his all fours to show us how to wash the floor in L.A. in the early days. There was a period in 1970 of 8 months when Srila Prabhupada lived in Los Angeles and set it up as the world headquarters. They were making devotees every day. Every day people would join and get trained up. It was such an atmosphere there. Harinam was going out with Vishnu Jan, very ecstatically, hours and hours and hours during the day. And it was just and Prabhupada was there. and setting it just, the dynamo. And he was showing so many things, how to chant, how to put on the tilak, So this is Prabhupada showed by his example, fulfilling this injunction here. All right, text 26. Na buddhi bedam janahed agyanam karma sanginam joshayet sarva karmani vidvan yukta samacharan. So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. Purport: Vedais sarvar ahameva vedya. That is the end of all Vedic rituals. What that phrase means is that Krishna is speaking. He says, I am the goal. In all of the Vedas, I am to be known. In other words, all the Vedas culminate in knowledge of me. In the 15th chapter, 15:15. All rituals, all performances of sacrifice, everything that is put into the Vedas, including all direction for material activities, are meant for understanding Krishna, who is the ultimate goal of life. But because the conditioned souls do not know anything beyond sense gratification, they study the Vedas to that end. But through fruitive activities and sense gratification regulated by the Vedic rituals, one is gradually elevated to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a realized soul in Krishna consciousness should not disturb others in their activities or understanding, but he should act by showing how the results of all work can be dedicated to the service of Krishna. The learned Krishna-conscious person may act in such a way that the ignorant person working for sense gratification may learn how to act and how to behave. Although the ignorant man is not to be disturbed in his activities, a slightly developed Krishna-conscious person may directly be engaged in the service of the Lord without waiting for other Vedic formulas. For this fortunate man, there is no need to follow the Vedic rituals, because by direct Krishna consciousness, one can have all the results one would otherwise derive from following one's prescribed duties. So you can see how this works. In the absence of a society like the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which really is meant to directly engage people in Krishna service, then you have a situation where, like in the 12th chapter, where Krishna says, well, if you can't directly practice Krishna consciousness, and you can't serve me, and you can't perform, then at least try to be charitable. Don't be attached to the fruits of your activity. That attachment to the fruits is what keeps you bound to this world. In other words, be charitable, be kind, give of yourself, and this will set the stage for when you come in touch with a devotee and you give some charity, or there's some activity. I'll tell you a story. In the early days, the Ratha Yatra took off in San Francisco. That was the first Ratha Yatra in 1967. They had no cart. They had this little pickup truck, that they put Balaram and Jagannath and Subhadra on. And they drove that truck in the hippie days down to the beach. And it was a big success. They gave out thousands of plates of prasadam and stuff like that. So, now, year by year, every year since '67, they've had this festival there. It's quite amazing. It's now 52 years. And so in those days, you just, hey, I'm building this cart, can you help out? And many times they would, because that was the hippie mood, yeah, I'll help out, I'll do, people would help. And in helping out is like the perfection of life. This Jayapataka Swami, the world-famous Jayapataka Swami, joined ISKCON in that way. Jayananda, who was one of the leading lights of ISKCON in the early days, he passed away during Prabhupada's time in 1977, before Prabhupada. And he was known for working hard and building those carts and engaging all kinds of people, devotees and non-devotees, in doing that, and people became devotees by that purifying activity and his association. So that's a perfect example of what Prabhupada is talking about here. He set up ISKCON in such a way that someone could walk in off the street and, sit down for a kirtan, and, usually hoping, okay, when it'll be over so we can have the food, which is still going on. But in the process of doing that, you're hearing the holy name, you're associating with the devotees, you may actually hang out and listen to the lecture, from Bhagavad Gita. and you're becoming purified. In other words, your desires are being changed. You still have so many nonsense desires, but there's one other desire. Let's check out the Hare Krishnas. That was a nice time we had. And so, that's how Prabhupada spread the movement. It's a genius, really. I mean, the basic thing, let's face it, I came back. You come once, well, why do you come back? Well, because of that halva. I mean, they cooked the halva with perfection, with butter and everything. There's so many cooks. And I just became totally addicted to that for years. And then after a while, I couldn't eat. I don't touch halva for years now. I had a certain number of years. But along with the halva, I'm getting the Hare Krishna, and I'm getting the book that I pick up, and gradually it becomes the book. So, but this is a little different explanation here, is that for those who have, are completely enmeshed in the material activities, somehow you take the same relative activities and purify them. And that's what so much of the Vedic writings is about. Okay, you're attached here. Chant these mantras, to Shiva and the Surya and Indra and all these. And in the middle, you'll also chant some to Vishnu, So there's some insertion of Krishna consciousness. And at least you're within the realm of the Vedic culture. And so you're open to reading all kinds of things, such as the Bhagavad Gita. And who knows, you'll read the Bhagavad Gita as it is. So that's the plan that is going on currently for purifying the society. Okay, where were we? 164 at the top? Okay, so now suddenly we have, in all of this, extremely important verse comes in that Prabhupada would quote all the time. Prakate kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vamudhatma kartaham iti manyate. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. Purport: two persons, one in Krishna consciousness and the other in material consciousness, working on the same level, may appear to be working on the same platform, but there is a wide gulf of difference in their respective positions. The person in material consciousness is convinced by false ego that he is the doer of everything. He does not know that the mechanism of the body is produced by material nature, which works under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. The materialistic person has no knowledge that ultimately he is under the control of Krishna. The person in false ego takes all credit for doing everything independently, and that is the symptom of his nescience. He does not know that this gross and subtle body is the creation of material nature, under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as such, his bodily and mental activities should be engaged in the service of Krishna in Krishna consciousness. The ignorant man forgets that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Rishikesha, or the master of the senses of the material body. For, due to his long misuse of the senses in sense gratification, he is factually bewildered by the false ego, which makes him forget his eternal relationship with Krishna. So, you can see how central this verse is. This, we're you have to kind of visualize how things are going on. We're this tiny little soul, subatomic, we have a certain power because we're part and parcel of Krishna, we're his energy. And so we suffuse this body with consciousness. That's mentioned in the second chapter. Avinashi tadvidi yena sarvam idam tatam. That which is pervading the body is indestructible. What's pervading the body? Consciousness. And so that's our situation, but we're in our material situation, we're completely beholden to the activities of higher powers. I mean, just in the the moment-to-moment functioning of the body, we don't know what's going on. It's just given to us, all the complicated things that are going on, just for us to sit here and breathe and just have a normal life for an hour. It's incredible, and so that's all happening not by us, but by higher powers. Directed by Krishna ultimately. Okay, there's so many demigods, there's like 33 billion demigods who are, even your blinking of your eyes is controlled, higher controlled. Like I had this problem with my arm, and thankfully now it's starting to recede. I'm starting to get better. But one little bang on the elbow, And I got all these pains shooting up and down my arm. I got nerve damage. Who knows what's going on? You know how fragile this body is. You know, when they step off the curb wrong, and I'll tell you a story. I was in LA for the Ratha Yatra. I go up every year since this time immemorial. You know, since I moved here, that's since '89, 30 years. I go up every year in August. So I used to go up a few days early before they had the bus program. They have a bus now. Have you ever taken? I don't know if you've never. You should come up. So you drive up there a few days early, and then there's a kirtan on is it Friday? I think Saturday night, the night before. There's programs Friday and Thursday, working up, and there's all kinds of devotees. It's like the whole 4-day festival. So anyway, as I had done a million times before, I was walking across the street, and I walked off the curb in the wrong way, and I severely sprained my ankle. Oh my God! It's like Thursday night. And the festival's on Sunday, and I know how long these sprained ankles take to heal, So now what am I going to do? Because my whole thing in the Ratha Yatra is the procession, is this dancing and chanting. I could hardly walk. So I kept it elevated, I put ice on it, the whole thing. And it's just, okay, I just realized one little walk and then your whole program is. But somehow or other, that ankle healed enough so that I could walk in that procession. That was very Krishna's mercy. But you realize when stuff happens like that, how, it's just like this is a machine you're riding on. It's mentioned, yantra rudani maya in the 18th chapter. Literally means riding on a machine, right? So, so everything is happening by nature. Just as we know, there's so many forces of nature that are going on, big and small, that we take for granted, and that make this world what it is. It's going on, right? So, but under the ahankara vimudhatma, vimudha means befooled, illusion, deluded, by this ahankar. This ahankar is the whole problem. Now ahankar literally means I'm the doer, right? And because I'm the doer, I'm the enjoyer, I'm the controller. In other words, I'm a little Krishna. I want to forget Krishna, deny his existence, because I don't see him, forget about that. I'm the control of my little domain. And if I can really have it together, I get a bigger domain, right? I'm the master of this, state or even country, So karta hamiti manyate literally means I am the doer, I am the controller, which is gross ignorance, because we're completely dependent. So that false ego, which leads us down into illusion and suffering, is the interface between the soul and the material world. If and when you read the third canon of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Lord Kapila Dev's teachings are the most detailed description of how the soul is gradually encased in this physical body, which has as its root the false ego. The false ego, in association with the mode of passion, produces the intelligence, and with the mode of goodness produces the mind. Yeah.
Excuse me. I mean, if this doesn't bother you that much, would you mind to repeat that very last detail again about how the interaction with this produces this and that?
Yeah. The whole procession is kind of involved, but the main idea is that it starts out with this sense of independence. We start out in the spiritual world. I will, in a second. Just give me a second. So we start out in the spiritual world, but we turn away from Krishna, and we then contact the material energy, which is created for this purpose, to give us a field of activity in which we can forget Krishna, because it's ultimately reformatory. So that false ego, false sense of self, the real sense of self, the real identity called the swarup of the living entity, is to be a very ecstatic servant of Krishna. And he reciprocates with us, in the spirit. So we reject that identity, and we want to be independent enjoyers. So we need a field for that, and that's this material world. And so we come into this material world with this false sense of self. It's called the false ego, ahankar. When that ahankar comes in touch with the material energy, specifically the mode of passion, then the mind is produced. In relation to the mode of goodness, the intelligence is produced. And in relation to the mode of ignorance, all of the different elements and the different senses in which we interact with them are produced. Beginning with sound. The sound has to have a medium, and the ether is there. And then we need a sense, the ear is there. Now these are the subtle senses, that eventually manifest in these gross organs. And then in interaction with the ether then produces, I think, the touch sensation, and the sense of touch, and the skin is produced, and gradually all of these senses are produced. You can read it in the third canto. And ultimately we end up with what we have here, which is a body with all of these senses, 10 senses, the knowledge-acquiring senses, Gyanendriya, the ears, the eyes, the touch, the taste, the smell, all of these. And then the active senses, like the hands, and most important active sense, the voice. The voice is the most important active sense. And so then we're conditioned, and we interact with this world and develop further in the modes of nature, and produce fruitive activity, which takes us from body to body to body. That's a huge summary. I'm sorry we don't have time. We're actually out of time. But we can begin with this verse. It's such an important verse. I'd like to read it again tomorrow, text 27. So if you come back, we'll continue with the discussion. But we really want to read Krishna book, because this is the summum bonum, and I think we're devouring the forest fire. There's two. He extinguished the forest fire, and now he's devouring the forest fire. There's two instances. We just had where, you remember that we had the Kaliya pastime, where he's dancing on Kaliya and chastising him? And then he came out, and for hours, the residents were staring at Krishna as he was enveloped in those coils, and they were in total anxiety that he was going to be killed. And then just at the point when they're at the point of death and anxiety, he breaks out, starts dancing, and punishes Kaliya. Kaliya's wives come forward and pray for the husband. Krishna agrees not to kill him. They are exiled, they go. Krishna comes out of the water, and everyone embraces him. They're ecstatic. But by that time, it's nighttime practically, and there's no way to go back home. And so they camp out on the beach of the river. And then in the middle of the night, this big forest fire comes. This fire is coming and threatening them. And Krishna says, please Krishna save us. And he swallows the forest fire. That's the first instance. Now here comes the second instance, chapter 19. While Krishna and Balaram and his friends were engaged in the pastimes described above, and that was Pralambasara, which was a lot of playing in the forest, and then this demon came disguised as a coward boy, but he knew Krishna was too powerful, so he attacked Balaram first. So he ends up carrying Balaram, and then Balaram realizes, he's taking me far away from one of the other boys, and he realizes he's a big demon, and he smashes his head and kills him. So that all happened in the previous chapter, and now it's describing what happened next. While Krishna and Balaram and their friends were engaged in the pastime described above, the cows, being unobserved, began to wander off on their own. I mentioned this earlier. He's not that dutiful a coward boy oftentimes, so it turns out right in the end. But so they're wandering off alone. Entering farther and farther into the deepest part of the forest, allured by fresh grasses. The goats, cows, and buffalo, so there's more than just the cows. The goats, cows, and buffalo traveled from one forest to another and entered the forest known as Ishikatavi. This forest was full of green grass, and therefore they were allured. But when they entered, they saw that there was a forest fire, and they began to cry. On the other side, Balaram and Krishna, along with their friends, could not find their animals, and they became very much aggrieved. They began to trace the cows by following their footprints, as well as the path of eaten grass. All the boys were fearing that their very means of livelihood, the cows, were now lost. When searching out the cows in the forest, they themselves became very tired and thirsty, but soon they heard the crying of their cows. Krishna began to call the cows by their respective names with great noise. Upon hearing Krishna calling, the cows immediately replied with joy, but by this time the forest fire had surrounded all of them, and the situation appeared very fearful. The flames increased as the wind blew very quickly, and it appeared that everything movable and immovable would be devoured. All the cows and the boys became very frightened, and they looked toward Balaram and Krishna, the way a dying man looks at the picture of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They said, "My dear Krishna, my dear Krishna, my dear Krishna, my dear Krishna, you and Balaram are very powerful. We are now burning from the heat of this blazing fire. Let us take shelter at your lotus feet. We know you can protect us from this great danger. Our dear friend Krishna, we're your intimate friends. It's not right that we should suffer in this way. We're all completely dependent on you, and you're the knower of all religious life. We don't know anyone but you." The personality of Godhead heard the appealing voices of his friends, and casting a pleasing, loving glance upon them, he began to answer. By speaking through his eyes, he impressed upon his friends that there was no cause for fear, and he assured them, don't worry. Then Krishna, the supreme mystic, the powerful personality of Godhead, immediately swallowed up all the flames of the fire. The cows and boys were thus saved from imminent danger. Out of fear, the boys were almost unconscious, but when they regained their consciousness and opened their eyes, they saw that they were again in the Bandira forest with Krishna, Balaram, and the cows. They were astonished to see that they were completely free from the attack of the blazing fire and that the cows were saved. They secretly thought that Krishna must be not an ordinary boy, but some demigod. In the evening, Krishna and Balaram, along with the boys and cows, returned to Vrindavan playing their flutes. As they approached the village, all the gopis became very joyous. Throughout the day, the gopis used to think of Krishna while he was in the forest, and in his absence, they were considering one moment to be like 12 years or more. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 19th chapter of Krishna, devouring the forest fire. And then we were going to have the description of autumn in the next chapter, which is very important. This chapter was expanded into a book by Srila Prabhupada called The Light of the Bhagavad. This was one of his first books he ever wrote. And you'll see, because there's all of these wonderful analogies in here, that it's very instructive just to meditate on this autumn, this rainy season. It's rainy season in autumn. And so we'll read that. It's a long chapter. It takes a few days. But before we end, this describing Krishna entering back into the town of Vraja. So in the Govinda Lilamrita, there's this elaborate description of this, because this is a very important part of the day when Krishna comes back and all of the burning separation is relieved. So there's two verses there that I memorized a million years ago and just came across recently and revived. So let me see if I can remember them and share them, and then we can adjourn. Shri de nurena padipinja de tanga gunja banyas ragambala chalala kakesha pincha niyoga pashamulali dalayashti shingi lola arunati papalayata pakshmalaksha vanyatana shamadakanta mitabivarsha sangsikta sarvajana necha tukora vrinda vangshi kalata tabaguna yovatadi Krishna sagoshama basatsa samayva yasya. Now, since you probably don't know Sanskrit that well, I'll try to translate in the time allotted. So, Shri Denu Renu, so from the sacred cows, all of these cows, a lot of dust is being raised up, and it powders everything. Padipinja ditang makes it orange-brown. His limbs, his gunja necklace, his hair moving here and there, his garland that he's wearing, his garment, beautiful garments, everything gets powdered. Niryoga Pashamaladi Dadayashti Shringi, he's got this little rope over his shoulder for tying the hind legs of the cows when milking so they won't be restless. Mulali Dala, he's got a flute that he's fashioned out of a little leaf, and he's playing that. The Yashti, the cow herder's stick, and the horn, the buffalo horn. And then his eyes are very wide open. He's looking here and there, just like big wide lotus petals. And then it describes, by the effort of herding these cows in the forest, he's perspiring slightly, and that's increasing his beauty. Vanya Shamajakant Amitabi Varsha, which is raining down a nectar of his beauty on the eyes of the chakora bird-like eyes of all of the residents of Vrindavan as he's entering into the town. Sangsikta Sarvajana nature the court of Vrinda. And then he plays that flute, Krishna. Vingshi Kala, and chanting all of the hearts of the gopis who were so much in pain and separation from him. And this way Krishna enters the town of Vrindavan at the end of the day. And we'll adjourn there, and we'll have our kirtan in a few minutes. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.